Paradise Lost, Episode 1. In the beginning. Once upon a time, there was a little fairy. She was cunning and curious to her own defeat, and endlessly hungry for good stories. She would listen eagerly to any elf or fairy willing to share how they'd come to hear Mother speaking to them through the trees, whispering in on a breeze, maybe speaking to them while they drank from a stream. The entire enchanted forest seemed to read like a dream. It felt as if everyone and their child had heard from Mother Earth at some point. Each of the little fairies' peers, one by one, began spending more time in the woods, off on their own, all alone, only to come back with cries louder than those that had come before them, full of happiness and colorful words painting their joyful experiences. Their elders would applaud them, cheer them on, and set them before the rest as an example of something special, yet another to join in with the masses who'd had personal encounters with the mother of all elves and fairy folk. The cunning little fairy became wary of the distance growing between she and the others her age, all of them singing and dancing their praises in the same songs and motions as she'd seen from those who'd come before them. All the while, she spent her free time trying to coax a conversation from the being everyone else seemed to have met. And the longer she went without hearing Mother's voice, the greater Beatrix's anxiety started growing, until music no longer enticed her to join in with her peers in dancing, and no amount of singing could engage her spirit in their merriment. The glow about her wings started dimming as she anxiously awaited her chance to commune with something so grand as the source of everything. She spent every moment outside of classes, wandering the wilder things, drifting among the beasts, while avoiding the merry feasts held each night by the fairy folk to celebrate new happenings within their community. One day, after she'd found a way to skip these merriments 3 times in a row, the oldest and wisest of her instructors pulled her aside for a private meeting with he and 2 others she'd never seen. Their eyes glowed royal purple. They were mesmerizing and astonished her to silence. The mysterious fae greeted her with a nod, and without using words, they asked her if she knew why she'd been called to meet them. Beatrix kicked her feet at the dirt beneath them. Her wings beat together enough to lift her from the ground, but barely. She looked up, offering sad eyes in exchange for their steady glow of attention. Is it because I haven't heard the Great One's voice?" she sobbed back. "Is that why you've called me?" Again she cast her eyes downward as she waited for their judgments to fall against her, the same as her peers had. The idea of such beautiful creatures disapproving over her for something that felt quite out of her control seemed unfair. She sniffled loudly, internally rejecting the idea that she'd done wrong to deserve such silence from the source of all life among them. One of the massive beings began chuckling. The sound of it caused the earth around them to rumble and quake. Beatrix looked up to see all 3 staring down fondly upon her. The once dim light surrounding her fizzled and spritzed as her heart leapt with excitement. Still, she was puzzled with their reaction. Why did they seem so pleased with her? I'm sorry." Her voice sounded soft as she spoke aloud for the first time. "Young one, can you keep a secret?" The first spoke, sending a wind so powerful it swirled around them like a whirlpool His words were formed with the wind, sweeping her into an eddy. Her heart beat more quickly. Was this it? Was this the moment she'd been waiting for? Is this how it had happened for the others? The three guardians passed silent words between themselves as the clearing became placidly silent once more. Beatrix waited as patiently as she could, until again they turned their attention to her. They drew in closer, surrounding her on all sides. No one has ever heard from Mother, not in the way they say they have. That is the difference between you and the rest. You, young Beatrix, are one of the few that couldn't pretend their way into happiness. You passed the test. Beatrix blinked her eyes in disbelief. Suddenly, all of the lonely moments, all of the misunderstandings, all the fairies murmuring against and behind her back at her lack of communing with Mother, all of their stories suddenly transparent. "You mean to tell me," she began, a slight rumbling forming beneath her own feet. "You mean to tell me that none of the stories are true?" The rumbling grew and grew until the energy around her was a radiant black. "It's okay," the guardian chuckled again. "It's natural for you to be angry this way." Beatrix looked up again. This time the admiration had drained from her face. She seemed to be turning red with her rage. "Young Beatrix, you are the exception. You weren't blinded by the need for acceptance, like us. You saw above the common conclusion. Had you bought into the current, you would have been no different than the others. Your desire would have caused you to find Mother in anything. And in that sense, it's magic." Beatrix could barely hear them. Steam was rising from her wings, burning the netting on their insides. They slowly disintegrated into nothing. The anger boiling inside her interfered with the connection running between them until their words meant nothing. "What am I supposed to do now?" she demanded. "How can I take any of them seriously?" Tears flowed from her eyes as rain from the growing clouds above them fell down upon them. "They should be chastised for buying a lie, and you should be ashamed for turning a blind eye." The ground was shaking violently now. Each of the three remained silent and still, comfortably above the mayhem she was creating. "There's so much we still have to tell you, but first you have to calm down." As if the words had ignited a fuse, Beatrix blew into the air with a piercing scream, and with a burst of smoke she disappeared into the sky. The three looked at each other for a moment before bursting into laughter. "Poor thing," one said to the others with a shrug. "It would have been so much easier for her if she would have just let us finish before transcending." As they headed out of the grove together, the other stranger stated, "I wonder where this one has gone. I've never seen an enlightened so prone to being angry. My bet's on Orion." The wise fairy guardian stroked his beard. The first things to go had been her wings. "What a small existence. That's where I did my time away too. I have no doubt now. She's gone to live among the humans." He grew excited in the wake of his conclusion, nearly skipping as they continued into the forest. To be continued.